Welcome to Intellicide, where we try to find out who killed intelligence and murdered common sense. I am Anthony Gentry. My co-host is Kyle Palmerville. And on today's episode, we have the curious case of Mike Johnson, House of Representatives.
Ooh, that's a good title. I like that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, because curious is definitely an understatement.
Listen, the more you read about this individual,
this guy, there's not much known about him. I had to look up a lot of information about him, and man, did it get weirder and weirder as it went on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But I mean, some of the highlights of this guy's weirdness. He has either 4 or 5 children, depending upon how you count. Because he claims he adopted a black son when he was 24.
Right.
He does not report having any checking accounts, savings accounts, or retirement accounts. He's blamed the fall of the Roman Empire on rampant homosexuality and supports criminalizing gay sex. And he and his son supposedly monitor each other's porn use using an app that is straight up spyware.
Right. Yeah.
So go ahead. What were you going to say?
We were bringing this up before we started the show. I don't understand how, and right. Mike Johnson is only 9 years older, 9 or 10 years older than his adopted son.
11 years older. Yeah.
Okay. 11 years.
Yeah.
But the dynamic between a child and a parent, I don't see how a child can fully be an accountability partner, because they can point out, hey, you have this, you have that, but there's no accountability from a parent from in my opinion. For a child to hold a parent accountable. I mean, what else? You're
talking about that?
Else can you say?
Monitor, this is the thing that gets me. The more I learn, so I got curious about what that whole app was,
right?
That they used, and so I went and looked a little bit. Wow, it's called Covenant Eyes, and they claim to have millions of users.
They probably
and the whole thing, it's straight up spyware that you put on your phone. It captures everything, captures all your keystrokes, every website you look at.
So banking information as well.
I mean, every keystroke. Yeah. It will know all your passwords.
Yeah.
And here's the crazy part: the people who push this Covenant Eyes, there are groups going around the country, like Moms for Liberty type groups, who are trying to force libraries to install this software on all of their computers in the libraries and public libraries.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I just, me personally, hey, if you want to use that app, okay, go ahead and use the app. But I'm just saying that, to have your adopted child be the one that's supposed to hold you accountable, that's just crazy to me. Let's say my biological children. Now, my children are 24 and about to be 20 this month.
Wow.
What would that look like where my child, hey dad, I noticed that you went to a porn site,
right. How does that look? Yeah, what exactly are they supposed to
so dad, you're
put
grounded.
$1 in the porn jar,
right? Okay, dad, I got to take the car key,
right?
So he knows. He can't do anything. Now, if you want to have another adult, somebody else in your church, to me, that's somebody that can hold you more accountable than a child can, who is honestly
that's a lot of, I think,
subservient to you.
Well, I think that's a lot of just looking at Covenant Eyes website, that appears to be, I think, what some of what they were thinking is, you let the church monitor your every move, literally everything, and it's I don't know.
Yeah.
As a security professional, the very idea of it goes against everything. I mean, literally, you're throwing
Right.
all of your internet security out the window. You might as well go post all your banking information on the dark web yourself, which you pretty much just did.
I hear you. I hear you, sir. I hear
I
you.
mean, just from
Well,
an internet security standpoint, it's the dumbest thing I've ever. And I can't believe they built a business model around it.
right.
It's hacking spyware.
Right. Well, I mean, again, if someone chooses to hack Covenant Eyes, then they, potentially have all this information, from, like you
It
said,
monitors.
millions of users.
Yeah, every keystroke. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think if you as a parent feel that you are so out of control of your own behavior that you need your son to keep you accountable,
Right.
you've
Then there's
got
the
bigger
problem.
problems as a
Right.
person.
We have a problem.
Yeah,
And,
you
and the
should
same
seek
thing with the church.
professional help.
The same thing with the church. If as a church, you're not involved in somebody. Now, listen, I'm not saying that things don't happen in church that, we've seen scandals, Jerry Falwell and other, such type things. The president of Liberty University,
Catholic priests,
but
the Catholic Church.
right. But what I'm saying is that if you're not discerning enough or observant enough of someone's life and the way that they behave, then right, you have other issues that that you can't distinguish, like, hey, this person, the fruit, as the church calls it, the fruit of their life and what they are generating, it should be evident. And I again, I have a problem when a child, you're putting a child in some kind of position to hold you accountable.
Yeah, that's asking way too much of a child.
Right.
It's not their responsibility to hold you accountable.
Yeah, exactly. So but that and what's funny is that's like one of the smallest cases of oddity.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, some of the yeah. Well, I mean, some of the quotes that I found about this guy too, that so there was an article talking about how he keeps outside of his office the flag of an organization.
Yeah, the NAR.
Yeah. Okay. Are you familiar with them?
I just read about it when we were discussing the show.
Okay, because I hadn't heard of them before either until I read that. Yeah. The national or New Apostolic Reformation.
Right.
They call it a sect of Christianity, but I think there's another term for that. But yeah, they believe that it's God's will for Christians to take control of all aspects of U.S. society.
Yeah, they basically want the United States to be a theocracy. Yeah. So,
yeah,
in researching and reading about that organization, I found it funny. Now, you don't have to agree with everything that Representative Rashida Tlaib says, but I found it funny that they basically censored her for having a Palestinian flag outside her office.
Yeah.
And yet they
well, but that's the whole thing, like that flag among Republicans right now. And I think all of this kind of goes toward so there was an article in the New York Times that I read, one of the ones that I think I shared with you. It was why Mike Johnson's speakership does not bode well for America. And one of the things he talked about is basically the fact that Mike Johnson is more radical and extreme than Kevin McCarthy was. And so we can expect his tenure to be more divisive, more radical, and more ideological than it was before now, which means in a week from yesterday, the U.S. government is supposed to shut down again because the stopgap is going to run out. And he has made zero progress negotiating anything. He's put forward two bills that have been shot down by his own party.
Listen, we talked about this on other shows. Why are we sitting here thinking that just because they elected someone else new to the speakership, that things are going to change? We have two opposition parties, and they get elected to oppose anything. Now, you don't have to agree with me. But I'll put it this way. We both have jobs in corporate America. How would you feel if someone that you worked with that was basically doing the same job that you were, or any other job in that organization, they didn't do anything and yet they got a paycheck?
Mm-hmm.
I think most people, if you frame it that way, would be upset. And yet we have individuals that they want the U.S. or the federal government to not do anything. They are fine with, hey, don't pass any more laws, don't do anything, but get a paycheck for it.
Yeah,
that's absurd to me.
Yeah, I mean you are of course making sense, because you're talking about politics as a job, right? And that analogy makes sense because most people work for a living. The thing about politics is that it's really more about power than it is a job. And so to them, to a lot of people in this country, preserving the status quo is more important to them than fixing anything, right? Because to them, it's already like and that's the whole point of like this idea of making America, quote unquote, great again, is that there is some mythological time in the past when things were perfect and we're getting away from that. Well, I mean, what they are talking about is the fact that the demographic of the country is changing. And it's quote unquote white people, are declining in power. And there's a lot of, I mean, we've talked about this for years. There are a lot of people on the American right who are basically just white people who are freaked out over, the fact that America is changing and it's becoming less Eurocentric, less white centric. And the thing to me personally is after talking about this for a long time with people, I find it weird to even think of white people. To me, white is a club. It's not a race. There's no such race as white. It's not a real thing. I am part French, part Irish. I'm French Canadian from my heritage, but those are races. That's like white is a club. Right. It's not a real thing, and it's a power structure. And that's the whole thing, is that people who talk about like, oh, the declining, people associate Western culture or civilization with whiteness, and they associate the decline in that, power structure,
I
as a decline in civilization, because they think the two things are the same.
Well, right. And listen, politics is like you said, it deals with power, but it's the conflict or the struggle for resources, whether that be, money,
right,
time, natural resources, land, etc. Right. So, my thing is we know, and I will say that, right, some things I can go with the status quo, but again, there's problems that, whether they are something that we wrote a law to try to fix and we found out the law was broken, or there's just matters and concerns that we never crossed before that we need laws to legislate. Before we had cars, there was no need for traffic lights and signals and whatnot, but we had to generate laws to try to control that environment. Right. So the same thing, we can't expect people to get elected and, congressmen and women make $175,000 basically, per year. And we expect them to do nothing. No, I personally am not satisfied with that. And, I don't care what the status quo is. The least you could do is present a balanced budget, which the government hasn't done, for years. Now, we have these stopgap measures and spending bills, but, that's not enough for you to earn that amount of money.
I mean, I agree with you. It's an interesting segue into another topic we were talking about, in that part of the reason that the there are people who think this way, right? Like there are people who think the status quo is okay. So their goal in getting into power is to stop things from happening. Like they want to, like there is a movement within the Republican Party that wants a government shutdown.
Oh yeah.
Right. They want everything to stop because, and the whole reason is because they're, and just like Tommy Tuberville, right? There is this idea among the right that taking hostages and making demands is how you do things.
So they're political terrorists, basically.
I mean, but their idea is that they're just tough negotiators, right? Well, that's exactly what the terrorist thinks, right? Like when they grab a hostage and they hold a gun to their head, right? So you're going to do what I want, or you're going to have this horrible consequence. How is that any different than what Tommy Tuberville is doing to the military right now? By preventing our military from having any leadership, he is and his whole thing is he just wants someone to negotiate to him and give in his demands. That's all, and he said this repeatedly. How is that any different? It's literally taking hostages, and this is the thing that gets me about all that. Government is about more than just passing laws. Part of the whole point of government is to have the discussions to pass the right laws. Exactly. Because it wasn't until people get in a room and sit down and have discussions together that they understand the needs of each other. Part of the problem right now is that half the government doesn't even want to have discussions. They don't want to talk to the other side. They barely even consider them human for a lot of it. And so their idea is that they know better than everybody else because the other side's not worth talking to. And all they want to do is seize power and enforce the ideas that they believe, like Christian nationalism or religion. I mean, it is no different from a Christian perspective than Hamas. Hamas in Palestine is a political party, but they are also radical religious extremists who believe in terrorism as a tactic. And that's unfortunately very similar to what we're seeing here on the right. I mean, it is.
You don't want to get anything done and you want a government shutdown, but guess what? A government shutdown is not going to pay and absolve us of this federal deficit that we have. The bill is still going to be due. So, and I've always said that, listen, I don't care who's in power, whether it be Republicans or Democrats. The fact is, if you say that spending, because even if we cut, Social Security totally off the board. If you cut Medicaid and Medicare completely off the board, it still would not pay down this federal deficit.
Right. I mean, Social Security is already paid for through a separate tax. So that doesn't even contribute to the budget. But yeah, I mean, if you took so there are things that they talk about, though, that they claim, and that's one of those things that I find frustrating, is that's a very deceptive argument, but they use it all the time. Even when after they get corrected, they immediately go right back to the same lie.
Well,
we have to cut Social Security because spending's out of control. But it's it's already paid for.
But
there are things that, and this is where it's frustrating because people like to make bad analogies about government, right? Like they talk about government like it's like your family budget, right? Like it's the same thing. The only reason the U.S. government is able to spend the amount of money that they are is because of the credit of the United States, that we're able to borrow enough money because people are assured that the U.S. government pays its debts. And if that changes and the U.S. government does not pay its debts, all that credit goes away. And that's when you talk about the bill starting to come due and people don't understand how much of money is fake. Money is made up, and a lot of it is based on perception. Credit, a lot of credit is based on perception.
We're not on the gold standard anymore, folks. We haven't been for a long time. So but getting back, let's move back to Speaker Johnson.
I mean, it's emblematic.
And we're talking about money.
We are. It's
talking about money.
He's so weird though, because we are in such a weird place.
It
allowed someone like him to rise to power and seem innocuous in doing it.
It's part of that MAGA crowd that their voices are the loudest, and people are basically catering to them. And but they're honestly, they're a minority in the Republican Party. The moderates or middle conservatives have, over the last few years have been exiting elected positions.
And
So now, now you have this minority that is basically the face of the Republican party, and everybody just, they don't know what to do.
it is a frightening reality that the minority, if they are willing to throw all rules and decorum out the window, can force things through if they're willing to go to extreme measures. And that's, I think, where the Republican Party is at. They realize they're a minority. They realize, and especially the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, they realize they're a minority, even within their own party. I mean, they're not a minority within their own party. They're probably 60% of their own party. But they are a minority of America. And so they don't even have a pretense of trying to win over voters through logic or policy.
Right.
It's all about, grievance. And, are you mad that this happened? Well, we're going to get even for you. I mean, that's kind of where they're at. So this is the guy who represents them. Who do you choose? And this is he was the fifth choice. When they kicked John McCarthy out, they couldn't. He was the fifth guy, and they finally, I think they only picked him. I think they only elevated him because they were starting to get embarrassed.
Well, it was embarrassing. Not they were starting to. They were embarrassed. But this guy that they picked doesn't have a bank account.
Right. He claims, at least, which obviously is a lie. He obviously has a bank account. He just didn't report it. And so the question becomes like, okay, what's the consequence for that?
Hold on, Kyle. I started at MCI in 1998. And I remember, I got a paycheck before the direct deposit got started. And I took it to the bank, and they were like, hey, it's going to take about 5 days for this check to clear. I'm like, hey, it's from MCI, reputable company. Why is it going to take that long? So you telling me that the federal government is issuing you a check, for,
and he's taking that check to what, a party store, a check cashing place?
The check cashing place, and they're charging him a percentage for his check. I mean, really, when you pay your bills, you obviously you're not doing bill pay. So what, you going to get a money order? You going to the post office getting a money order?
Yeah, right.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. Not in 2023. It makes
right.
No sense. Especially when a lot of places just require, and this is what kills me. It's the government. I know people who work for the government. You have to set up direct deposit when they hire you. And if you don't have a checking account, there's a government credit union. They just give you one. I mean, I know people who do it. That's how it works these days. Like, if you don't have a checking account, don't worry, we'll give you one. There's a government credit union.
Bro, most things now require a credit check.
Right. Yeah.
They require a credit check.
Yeah.
So, I don't believe it. I mean, the fact that how do you get a credit card? How do you prove that, hey, yes, I make this amount of money? You just take your W-2s everywhere?
Right.
I don't believe it either.
What, to me, honestly, what it shows is that he is one of those people that really, on the right, who is like, what do you call, like a sovereign citizen type, who doesn't acknowledge the authority of the U.S. government. So to him, people asking him for that stuff was like an intrusion. And he thought of it as, well, I'm not answering your questions because I don't have to. Because for a lot of people, that's the thing about privileges. It's like, well, if there's no consequence to me, then why would I do it? Which goes back to like the shopping cart. Do you know about the shopping cart test?
No.
The shopping cart theory is basically like, it's like this theory that talks about whether people are able to self-regulate their behavior. And basically, in simplest terms, if you are one of those people who puts your shopping cart back, you're a good person. If you don't, you are not a good person. If you don't if you can't do the bare minimum, and that's the thing, there's no consequence to you for not doing it. That's the whole point of it, right? That's why it's the test, because it's an example of one of those things that you can do it and it benefits everybody else if everybody does it, but there's no consequence to it if you don't do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you just feel like screw everybody else, I'm just going
Listen,
to leave this here. And
I put my sharpened cart back every time. I don't care how far
Mhm.
away from the cart collection spot I am. I take it there because right, I don't like the look of all these carts taking up these spaces and then you having to, try to navigate or I can't park in this
Yeah,
spot because there's a cart in there.
right.
So why would I do that to somebody else?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I hate it when someone leaves it there for me. So why would I do? Yeah.
Right. And matter of fact, my wife's car one time, up here in Michigan, we get real bad windstorms. She, was parked next, her job is next to a Kroger's parking lot, and the wind blew a cart right into her car door. Had to get
Yeah.
it, had to get that repaired.
Yeah.
So, right. You're right. It's the least that you could do. And I find it funny if he is a sovereign state individual that you would be working for the federal government and
Right.
you believe
Well,
that
this
you're
goes
a
back to what you were
sovereign
saying
entity.
before. Like, there's a bunch of people in the government whose whole point in getting there is trying to sabotage the government and
Yeah.
prevent it from doing any work,
Yeah.
prevent it from doing anything because they don't want the wrong people to get helped.
Who decides who the wrong people are? Mike Johnson?
Mike
Mike
Johnson's one of
Johnson.
those people who feels like, I mean, this is where that whole thing with his adopted black son, right, feels very white savior, blind side kind of thing, where it's like he's the well, of course, this young black man needs me to come in and save him, and I'll adopt him and give you a father figure to look up to, even though I'm only 11 years older than you.
Yeah.
I
The
mean,
race of the individual is not that's not a sticking point to me. That I'll tell you what is a sticking point to me. So you said this was when he was 11 years old and he's 40 now.
so they're 11 years apart in age. He was 24 when he quote unquote supposedly adopted this guy when the
Right.
guy
He
was
he he
15.
was 24 and the young man
Was
was
15.
okay. So again,
Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. So if they were 15, he would have been, if they're 11 years apart, I'm sorry, he'd have been 14 when he was 25.
okay. So and how old is the adopted son now?
Like 40.
Okay. So we're basically talking about 25 years ago. So roughly around 98, 99, somewhere
Mm-hmm.
around there,
Yep.
this occurred. Okay. So what I find odd is that social media has been around for a long time. Facebook has been around for a long time. You're
Mm-hmm.
telling me that you didn't post any pictures of Facebook, at all. You
Mm-hmm.
didn't, like, hey, this is my son. You've only been an elected official since 2017.
Right.
So there was really no necessity for this adopted son to say, hey, I don't want to be in the public eye prior to that. You're telling me around 2000, even 2005, he's a young individual. I don't know very many young individuals that don't have pictures posted on the internet. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that they don't exist, but I find that very odd. And even if you don't have social media, you're telling me that your adopted family did, hey, this is me and my brother. This is me and my children.
Right.
That in and of itself is odd. I don't buy
I
that.
find that I find the wording all very weird because to me, like saying that you're adopting someone, like bringing someone into family is a very important thing to me. And even if it's found family or chosen family, right?
Right.
People who choose to make someone else family, bring them into their lives in a way that is much more, like you said, intimate than what it would appear that he did. Like
Right.
there should be pictures. Like if this person's really a part of your family, like they'd be there on the holidays and stuff like that.
Right.
And you would go places with them and they would be part of your life and there should
Right.
be evidence that they're part of your life.
Exactly.
But otherwise it's like, is it just a charity case?
Mm-hmm.
That you are
Right.
talking up because it's politically beneficial for you.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, it's a classic case of the, hey, I've got black friends. You know, I can't be racist. I have black friends.
Yeah, well, like I said, I at the very least, I find it very odd that, yeah, this is a family member, and now I don't have pictures of me with every family member that I have, but we might be friends on Facebook.
Mhm.
They might reach out to me every once in a while. I got their number in my phone.
Yeah,
All I'm saying is that is that kind of a relationship, father and son, that's very, very odd that there's no picture. Like, the only picture that we've seen is when this kid was 15.
it's like he adopted him and they immediately became estranged. There's no evidence they ever spent any time together after that.
Right. Yeah. That's funny. So yeah, I'm looking at it now. It says when they were newlyweds, him and his wife, they took him in when he was 14 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm all for adoption and everything, but it is like you said, it's very weird because it's like if you
Listen, and I'll say this because what I'm reading, they said the outlet also claims that James, his adopted son, has an extensive record of previous arrests, purportedly dating back decades, including over drug-related and other petty crimes that led to jail time. James reportedly faced over 18 criminal cases from 2003 to 2010 in Florida alone, including charges of possessing now, okay, so 14 when he got adopted, he's 40 now. I'm sorry, sir. He should have been You should have been active parent during this time. 2003.
yeah, wasn't the whole point of adopting him to help him or mentor him and prevent
Right.
that stuff? But
Right.
yeah.
So I come on, man. And what's he doing in Florida? If this is your adopted son, why is he in Florida?
Yeah. So yeah, we're down to less than a minute. I think we're running out of time here.
Okay.
This has been an interesting discussion. I don't know. I mean, I think, with the election results from last week and next year coming up, I think it's going to be an interesting year.
Well, yeah, it will be.
Right.
And we can talk about that on a future show. So, this is Anthony and Kyle signing off. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and we will catch you next time on Intellicide.